Alright, Bathurst, Mount Panorama. If you watched my last track guide or used the settings from it, they are good. This is a redo though. I got in the car, was driving it, and wasn't quite happy with it. It is more nimble. It has lots of rotation, but it is a little knife edge, not very forgiving. So this is the old setup. If you want a car that has more rotation, not if you like a little bit more oversteer, all that stuff, this is the old setup. It is good. The difference, I think, is basically this setup is better on the flat section of the track, and my new setup is better in the mountain section of the track. So you got to pick what you like, I guess. So ride height here from the iRacing setup is lowered. Suspension is as soft as it goes. Camber, if you know my channel here, I like to play around with it. I kind of think, but I can't prove that it makes the car better. But you don't have to adjust the camber, not necessary. Toe in. Pretty similar to iRacing. Ride height again lower in the rear. ARB 5. That's giving some of the rotation to the car. Uh, Rear compression is all the same. 14 liters for the race, 5 liters for quali if you were going to do 2 laps. Gear stack very tall. It is a bit awkward on this track, but you need that extra top end speed for the big straights here. So unfortunately, that's what you got to go with. So this is the new setup. So the ride height is increased a little bit from the old one. Damper compression is the same. Brake bias, again, that's an individual thing, but it's on the higher side on this track. Suspension soft as it goes. Camber, not as much camber as the last setup, and the toe-in is increased. Spring rate in the rear, again, soft as it goes. Camber reduced in the rear, and toe-in increased. The big change here is the ride height in the rear is a lot higher. That increases the rake, which gives the car more rotation because the ARB is down to 0. I just found with that ARB at 5 even the back end was just the car rotated, but it was just not as predictable. So by increasing the rake, you do reduce the understeer of having the 0 ARB, but it doesn't have as much rotation, not as much oversteer as having that ARB turned up. If you wanted to increase a little bit or decrease a bit of the understeer, you could even increase the ride height in the rear a little bit more, and that would give the car a little bit more rotation. I think in a smaller increment than the ARB, changing that up to 5 mils. And the compression in the rear is the same, 14 liters, very tall, all that stuff is the same. If you are new to Mount Panorama, it is a very tricky track. The cold tire laps are quite a bit slower, don't get frustrated. Your first lap and your last lap are going to have a big difference in time. If you're driving the car well, every lap you do, the time is just going to go down and down. So just don't get too frustrated there. It is pretty crashy in the mountain section, so watch out for that. Track is 21 degrees, 34% usage. So we'll go through the laps in slow-mo and then run them out at full speed. So coming into turn 1, looking for the 50 board, between the 50 and the 100 board. Gonna get on the brakes. Third gear, you probably won't be in fourth gear for this one. And you can also use the this light pole and this light pole. It's a smaller width in between the two light poles. Getting down into second, hard on the brakes. Really trail braking here is pretty important. So just releasing the brakes, slowly picking up the throttle. You want to get on the throttle before the apex. Hugging this curb as tight as you can. I get on the curb now with the new setup. It's not really that punishing. With the old setup, it was a lot more punishing. So ideally don't get on it. Picking up that throttle, using all the track here, all the green stuff on exits, and just make sure you're back on track before the grass. Big long straight, big battles, course, lots of drafting, all that good stuff. Practice defensive lines, it's going to come into play. So looking for this 50 board in fourth gear, and this grass here where the pavement ends, that's where we're going to hit the brakes. Braking down into third gear and then letting the car roll in third gear. On lap 1, especially if there's cars in front of you, probably want to shift down here into second, again because the tires are cold and it's a big difference. But once lap 2 even, lap 2 is fine, probably 3 for sure. Just rolling in third gear. This is again an awkward corner, awkward gearing with this gear stack. Just releasing the brakes and then around this tree shifting down into second. I don't like to shift through a corner, not a good strategy, but with this gear ratio you have to. If you come in third gear, you're going to exit and the RPMs are way too low. If you brake into second gear at the beginning of the corner, you're losing a lot of speed on entry. So you kind of have to do it that way. On exit, you want to get your tire on this curb. You don't really want to mount this curb like I did. It's not too punishing. Again, with this new setup, the old setup, this would cost you some real time. This one, not really so much because the ride height isn't letting it drag your car too much. In a race, again, you're gonna have to cover the inside here for sure. Yeah, that's all there is to it. Looking for this tree in third gear. Gonna start to lift, and then looking for this third sign here, this tire power, the third sign. You want to be heavy on the brakes, slowing down, shifting down into second here at this tree, and then shifting down into first. Heavy on the brakes. You have to make sure the car is slowed when you shift down into first. If you're coming in too hot and you shift down into first, those rear tires are going to under rotate and want to spin you out. So watch out for that. Turning into the camber of this corner in first gear, picking up the throttle nice and early. It's a short time in first gear. Now again, this is another difference with the setup. The old setup, you didn't really want to be into this cement past the line. Just the ride height unsettles the car, but because the ride height is higher now, you can make use of this. And yeah, you want to get up as tight as you can, run the car out wide, and work your way up through the gears. There's a little bump at the top of the hill here. It shouldn't unsettle your car, but just don't be surprised. Again, in a race, you may have to cover the inside line here, but the fastest way is to open this corner up, way over to the left, and then just trying to straight line this as much as possible, minimize the steering inputs. This is a pretty big hill. Don't shift too early. You want to hold second gear till you're getting up near the top. If you shift too early, it won't cost you much time, but the car will bog down a little bit. And you want to hug this corner. I catch the grass here, and that's okay, but if you take much more than that, you will get an X. And run the car out to mid-track. You don't have to go all the way over to the right here. That really just extends the track. Not the end of the world. If you do, it doesn't really cost you too much time. And then right up tight against this curb again. I touch this curb with the new setup. That's not really a big issue. Now this is a tricky one. The old setup, you'd want to turn in basically at the start of this curb, but with the new one, getting about a car length onto the curb and then turning in. The old setup, you'd have to lift through this. The back end would just want to kick out on you too much. This one, however, back is more compliant. You can take this full throttle. Again, lap 1, you'll have to lift. Lap 2, maybe you'll have to lift, but then you should be good to go full beans on this one. On exits, you want to get right up against this curb, but you don't want to get up on it. It is a nasty curb. You get your right-hand tire on it, not the end of the world, but watch out, it can spin you out if you go over it. You're in big trouble. Third gear, maybe fourth gear, if you're drafting off somebody. I did, reach the rev limit here, but I like to keep it in third just because it's more consistent. Lifting here at the sign, if you're braver, you can probably keep it full throttle till about here, but it is harder to control the car. You want to have the wheel straight, pointed at the curbs here, and getting on the brakes down into second gear. Big blast of brakes just to slow the car down, and then just let the car roll in, and then another blast of brakes once you're back on the pavement, to keep the car tight up against this wall. You don't want to run this wide. That is not going to be a good day. And just releasing the brakes, feathering the throttle. This just basically takes practice. There's no secret formula to tell you how to do it. It just takes practice. And just keeping a little throttle on just to keep that back end compliant, and just aiming for the real camber piece of this corner, and letting the car roll in and picking up the throttle as early as possible. This whole section, if a car crashes or spins in front of you, very easy to get collected, so just watch out. This is a fun but dangerous area. Working up into third gear just for a short time, and then lifting. Again, you want to hug the right-hand line, or right-hand side here. You have to come in here on the right-hand side, and you want to have that wheel straight and your car straight. If you're coming in here at an angle, you're going to be in trouble. In real time, it looks like I'm braking at the Falcon board, but in slow-mo, I'm braking a little bit before it. Down into first gear, you want to keep to the right a bit, mid-track, a little bit to the right, and shifting down into first. Again, you have to make sure the car is slowed down enough when you shift down into first, otherwise that back end is going to want to kick out. And then you're looking for the increase in height in the sign here, and then picking up the throttle to get on full throttle by this point. And then just unwinding the wheel using all of the track. The shifts will come at you a little quicker here, so just don't get caught holding it in the wrong gear. Big battle area. So the quickest line is on the left-hand side, opening it up, but again, lots of drafting, lots of battling. And coming into the next one, fourth gear, the 100 board, looking for this yellow sign right in front of it, getting on the brakes pretty darn hard, down into second gear. Again, trail braking, just once you're past that white line, starting to release the brake a bit. It's a blind exit, so it's a little tricky here. And then just releasing that brake and picking up the throttle as early as possible. Again, this takes practice just to know how much speed you can carry without crossing this curb, because once you get a tire on that grass, you get an X, and if you cut this corner completely, you get a very painful slowdown. So if that car in front of you gets all on that grass, you know he's going to have a slowdown and is going to be braking somewhere before the finish line. So watch out for that. Making use of the whole track on exit, you can get a tire up on this curb, not the end of the world, but do not mount that curb. Even with this setup, with the ride height, it is going to cost you a lot of time. So just right up to the edge of that curb. So third gear, basically you might be hitting fourth if you're drafting, but looking between these two light poles as a braking zone. Hard on the brakes, just like turn one. Basically, this is a repeat of turn one. Hard on the brakes, releasing the brakes, letting the car roll in, and trying to pick up the throttle before the apex. Again, ideally don't get on this curb with this setup. However, you can. It's not too costly. And then just letting the car run out wide. You can touch this grass. My left tire is still on track. However, that is a very you can't get much closer than that. You can get an X if your tire crosses that line, and that will ruin your quality lap, of course. And if you get lots of tire on this grass, you can spin out and crash. This is a very important corner. Do not mess this corner up in qualifying. If you mess this corner up on qualifying, you ruin the lap you're on and you ruin the next lap. So you really have to nail this one. And in a race as well, this can be a pretty crashy corner. So watch out for that. And the finish line is really close here, so there isn't really a chance to overtake anyone on this straight. So you kind of have to get that pass done through that last corner if you're gonna go for it. And yeah, so a 220 pretty much flat. Should be a competitive time. So good luck out there. We'll see you on track. See you next time. Hit the like and subscribe. We'll run this out at full speed.